Hey y'all, happy Wednesday. Welcome to week 3 of the Octavia Butler mixtape course. How y'all doing? Let me know if you can hear me. Let me know if you can see me clearly, y'all. We are jumping into the patternist universe, and I'm super excited. If y'all don't know, your first time tuning in, I'm Dr. Brianna Whiteside. I am the facilitator of the Octavia Butler mixtape course. And we just finished Kindred last week, and today we are jumping into the Patternist universe, which is my favorite series by Butler. It is her most understudied work, and I wanted to not be understudied anymore. And so as many times as I can teach this series, as y'all can see, my book didn't have it. Like, the cover is off. My book has been through the fire and the rain, okay? There is nothing left of this book. It has all of my original notes. What's fascinating about this book, y'all, let me tell you, I got this book as a master's student. It was my first time reading Butler's work, and it was 2012. The year was 2012. I had just graduated from undergrad. In my master's program, I'm working towards my master's thesis, or trying to think about what I want to write for my master's thesis, because what's fascinating is that I wrote my undergraduate thesis on Richard Wright and Ralph Ellison. So I was writing on men. But then when I came across Butler's work, of course, y'all know the story, I switched over to Kindred, but I wrote my entire thesis on this series. Right? And it has been through there. It has my master's thesis notes. It has my dissertation notes. It has notes that I make as I read new things and discover new things. And, you know, it's been down through there. It has been down through there. If the cover don't tell you, it's been told, okay? So anyway, this is my favorite series by Butler. As I said, Butler privileges everyone who reads her work closely. And so I want everyone to get those nuggets and to enjoy her as a writer just as much as I enjoy her as a writer. So this is definitely a labor of love. Okay, y'all, let me see, where are the people who want to hop on as panelists? If you want to hop on as a panelist, please go ahead and subscribe, or you know what to do. Register as a guest or request to come on up, and you can get on the panel tonight. If you want to stay in the chat, just go ahead and hit the like button. Just help me out, give me some likes. And they gave us more spots. I think hit the screen, get some like buttons up here. I'm super excited to have y'all on. Okay, I'm trying to pull everybody up. All right. We got 2 more spaces. If y'all want to come up and share your thoughts, if you didn't get to be on the panel the last times, this is your moment to shine, because we're in this world for the rest of the semester. As y'all come on, can y'all mute yourselves, please? Thank you. Okay, let's see. Got one more. Okay, we got one more. I think we have one more space. There we go. All right. We have our people. Y'all, welcome to the Patternist universe. As always, I'm going to try to read Butler's thoughts about her text. And I want to read interviews coming from, hey, can you mute it? I can mute her. Okay, cool. All right, so this part of Wild Seed, or pertaining to Wild Seed, comes from an interview from 1988 with Larry McCaffrey and Jim McMenamin. Okay, and so here's what Butler says about Wild Seed specifically. So Larry asks, although a lot of your work is about immortality, then it's not so much about life after death as it is about finding a way to be immortal while you're still alive. So he's making a comment like, your work isn't about the afterlife. It's about how to be immortal now. And Butler says, "You're right. When I was in my teens, a group of us used to talk about our hopes and dreams. And someone would always ask, if you can do anything you wanted to do, hold no bars, what would you do? I'd answer that I wanted to live forever and breed people, which didn't go over all that well with my friends. In a sense, that desire is what drives Doro and Wild Seed in Mind of My Mind. At least I made him a bad guy." And so I knew y'all was going to say, I see somebody in the chat saying, I can't stand Doro. Y'all, Butler wanted to breed people herself. She admits it. So a part of you can't stand a part of Butler that wanted to breed people. I'm just saying, I'm just here to stir the pot. I'm just here to tell y'all what she was thinking as we hop into this universe. Let me set the stage for you before I ask the panelists what they thought. This is Butler's first introduction to this series, right? This book. Oh, sorry, y'all. Hold on. Something's popping up on my screen. Okay. So Wild Seed is the first book of the Patternist series. So if you've ever read Mind of My Mind, Clay's Arc, Survivor, Pattern Master, and you read those as standalone books, of course, you may have noticed some distance. You may have not liked them as much. And that's because you need to read these books in order of the narrative plot. And the narrative plot follows Wild Seed first, which is why we started with Wild Seed. It was published in 1980. And then it goes Mind of My Mind, which is why we are reading that next. And then it goes Survivor. I will be distributing a copy of Survivor because I know it's out of print and I have a digital copy. And then after that, there's Clay's Arc, and then there's Pattern Master. So in order to get the true value of the Patternist series, you need to read them in order of narrative plot, okay? Which is what we're gonna do. Now, Wild Seed sets the tone. Anyanwu, that's how y'all pronounce her name if you didn't know. Anyanwu and Doro are the progenitors of this superhuman race of people who we are starting to encounter. This book is the book that follows Kindred. As Butler was writing, and in a lot of her notes and even in a lot of her interviews, Butler admits that Kindred was the most depressing book that she had ever written, right? Though it is her gateway novel and so many people love Kindred, she admits that this book was depressing for me to write. So when she finished writing Kindred, she actually says that she wanted to write something fun. And Wild Seed, she considered her fun book. Okay. So I just wanted to say that, yes, Wild Seed in a sense is a straightforward about slavery in some way or some type of confinement. If it's not slavery, it is confinement in a way. And so she does admit in her notes as well as in her interviews that the only two books that she writes straightforwardly about enslavement are Kindred and Wild Seed. Okay. We could read all of those other things into her other texts, but her goal was not to do that. I also want to say before we hop into this text and before we get to Wild Seed, and I did kind of say this on the Substack earlier today, a lot of people like to see the patternists we're starting to get glimpses of them in this book with Lael Sachs, who is a telepath. A lot of scholars prefer to see the patternists as superheroes. But Butler is clear in her notes that these are very dangerous people and you wouldn't want to live in their universe. You kind of see Lael, you kind of not want to deal with Lael, and I know a lot of people responded to that. You also kind of see little passing mentions of telepaths going crazy or insane in the section that we read for tonight. And so I want you to keep those things in mind. Yes, Anyanwu and Doro, the shapeshifter and the body snatcher, are our protagonists, and we are to focus on them. But don't forget about what's happening at the margins. Okay. A lot of people forget about what is going on in the periphery. And when it slaps you in the face, it's too late. And I don't want that to happen to you. So panelists, what y'all got? What y'all think? Is this your first time reading Wild Seed? I want to hear your organic and honest responses. Anybody can go first.
I'll go first.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my first time I actually listened to it. So if anybody's struggling with it, listen to it. Is much better, and you could hear the pronunciation of words that you might not get. Um, Wild Seed kind of was like a whirlwind for me. Doro pissed me off through and through just by his inability to produce what he wanted to. It's like you've been here thousands of years. You keep trying and keep trying. You should have gotten it down by now, and yet here you are. And it really, I'm like, get it right. And their relationship, and Yawu and Doro's relationship, where um it starts off very, quid pro quo, you know, do this for me and I won't kill your children. And is blossoming. I don't know. I forget when we were supposed to stop. I don't want to
At
give
the end of
any.
book one, when
Okay.
he
Okay.
tells her
So
to
yeah,
marry.
they end up forming a mutual respect for each other. And she convinces him somewhat to stop
Nope,
killing
nope,
us
nope,
much.
nope, nope. You read too far.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let me shut up.
But I did want to respond to something that you said. You said Doro should have gotten it by now, right? He should have been able to be successful by now. And I'm always interested in, Butler's works do have religious undertones, right? She is writing against this Baptist tradition. And in some ways, some people have the same questions for God, right? Some people say, by this time, you have not bred but created humanity, and it looks like they're repeating these same cycles, and you have not created this race of people that you truly desire. So we have to also consider free will as we're
Mhm.
considering Doro's inability to create this race of people over a millennia.
Yes, because even though that is weird because he expresses that they have, like they're at his will and they'll do anything for him, and yet they go, sideways and do things that they're not supposed to. So yes, that free will makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, who next?
I'll go. This is my first time reading Wealthy, and I'm reading it from the perspective of a Nigerian and of somebody who has read Chinua Achebe's works. Because I had a question for you actually.
Okay.
What does she say anywhere in her interviews where she got her research from, or how she did her background narratives and what she kind of looked at?
The Igbo culture. Igbo
Yes, Igbo. Hmm.
Yeah. So Anyanwu, yes. As a matter of fact, I think it would be better for me to write a post about it on the Substack
Yes.
because she is deeply in the African traditions, and she is very influenced by. I do know that the name Anyanwu came from somewhere, some African research that she was doing, but she said she could never find the citation again because she never wrote it down. But a lot of her work for this book specifically did come from Africa, African traditions. I don't think her notes necessarily say that she was influenced by Achebe specifically, but you can still be influenced. You know what I mean?
Right.
Be indirectly influenced. But yes, the Igbo culture.
Yeah, so I'm from the Igbo tribe. And it was, I loved the direct use of like names, what her name means and how it embodies her in every in every way, which is
Right.
something I wrote about in the Substack. Another point that I wanted to point out is yeah. So I mean, my dad was kind of a historian, but he would pass down stories.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was of shapeshifters. That is very much alive. And that we have a couple of shapeshifters, people that can turn into cats, which is why we have a thing about cats. We have a thing about bats and birds and things like that. And there are different deities, different spirits that are housed like masquerades and things like that. You'll see it at some of our functions in our parties. So I feel like she's gotten that down, which it just reminded me of the first of the trilogy, Things Fall Apart, from my check, and we're picking up where that left off. And so that was cool to me. In terms of Doro, is neither here nor there. Maybe because I know people like him. Like he's very much who I expected him to be. But I do like the fact that I think it's clear that Anyanwu, which is how we pronounce it, Anyanwu, she very much has semblance of control, but how we say, I think it's in every culture, like where the man is the head, the women are the neck. And so she's trying to control him in her type of way, but she's quickly gonna find out like that's not, well, I assume that she's quickly gonna find out like that's not
gonna work.
It's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And so, but she still has a choice, and it kind of brought me back to Dana, how she had power in her own, but she still made a choice. Like, okay, I'm gonna go with Rufus. I'm gonna try to change him somehow. I'm gonna kind of turn his head or be the neck, and try to control this narrative before it spins out of control. And again, we're forgetting that we can seldom change people. So I'm quick to finish and find out what really happens, even though I feel like I know it's gonna be on some mess.
Oh Lord. Okay, I found a quote that I want to read because you asked about the influence, the African influence, right? And so I think I should read it now. And you can help me with the pronunciation of this word. I think it's Atagabusi, Atagbusi.
Atabusi. Yeah.
One more time.
Atabusi.
Atawusi.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to read it. The question says, how did your conception of Wild Seed's main physical female character take shape? And Butler says, for a while, I didn't know I was going to relate to Anyanwu to the evil. The solution came from a footnote about a woman named,
We'll see.
there we go, in a book called The King and Every Man by Richard N. Henderson.
Atabusi.
In a book was a shapeshifter who had spent her entire life helping people, and when she died, a market gate was dedicated to her and later became the symbol of protection. I thought to myself, this woman's description is perfect. Who said she had to die? And I had Anyanwu give
Atabusi
as one of her names. I gave Doro his name without knowing anything about his background, but later on, I looked up Doro in a very old, very tattered Nubian English dictionary and discovered that it means the direction from which the sun comes, which worked perfectly with what I was trying to do. And Anyanwu ties into that since Anyanwu means sun. So I don't know if y'all caught that Doro was a Nubian. It will be discussed in great detail in part 2 of Wild Seed. But I do know that sometimes I mentioned this because it's important, because the essence matter. And I'm saying essence because I want to talk about life form. Anyanwu can shapeshift. And that's where we get to the first question. Anyanwu can shapeshift, but in essence, she is a Black or African woman. Doro can body snatch, and he wears different types of bodies, right? But in essence, he is still a Nubian, a Black man, right? And so those things matter, even though they're wearing different shells. In essence, they're still African. Okay? Wanted to say that. All right, anybody else want to share their thoughts? What y'all think? First time reading Wild Seed?
I'll go next.
Mm-hmm.
I am absolutely loving it. It is my first time reading her works when we did Kindred, and this is different from Kindred, and I'm a kind of like a superhero type person, so this is like got me like flying, in terms of excitement. I thought of the Marvel character Vixen, that is a shapeshifter also so that's what I thought about with her shapeshifting and things of that nature. So I said, I wonder if that was anything that she thought about at that time, because I think Vixen came out around the time that she did this also. So it was just interesting to see. Then I saw the character of Doro looking like a control freak for him being, and he doesn't care about anything but his own mission. At first, I thought he did like Inyawu, and that they were going to do something together because they had that in common about being eternal. And he won her over, and the fact that she never met anyone like herself, I thought this was going to be great for both of them, until it was like, no, you're just going to be my tool because I have another plan, and that's all you're doing. So that's what I saw. I also looked at something you just said about these shells. I took that from a spiritual aspect of that's all we are. We are nothing but shells. And the Doro that's inside of us is who we are. And so I thought about that and said, wow, that's just, something else for us to think about, or something to look at, and how we carry ourselves throughout our lives. We spend so much time on so many other different things where it just doesn't matter. Because just like one body, he leaves 1 minute and he's on to something else. I was like, wow. I also looked at Isaac, with Isaac being his son, being part of him also, but they're so different in personality, because Doro has no feelings for anything, at least at this point that we don't know. I don't know anything about him because I just stopped where you said to stop. But you can see that Isaac does at least care. He loves her, and he loved her when he first saw her, but it was just a matter of his power. It wasn't as though he was egotistical about it, where you could see that Doro is very arrogant.
I wonder though if, points taken for sure, but I wonder how tolerant we would be if we could not die. Like if you have watched everyone you care about die, if you know that you would never have, or you think you would never have a companion, how tolerant would you be, or would you show up as a Doro?
Probably wouldn't have much tolerance at all, because the thing is, you've been around for thousands of years. So why should you care about something now? The only thing you really care about is what you're trying to accomplish, because nobody else is going to be around long enough to see what you're trying to do, nor do they understand what you're going through. So I looked at that as well, when I was considering his feeling for her. But that's got to be a very interesting perspective of how he walks around.
Yeah, and I think that we should, I know y'all running the Doro hate account in the chat and on the Substack, but we do have to consider, and you would probably, and I'm going to ask you, of course, next class, do we have sympathy for Doro when we finish the text? And you may say yes or no, because you'll learn more about his background. But if you couldn't die and you knew that people were fragile and you were trying to build a race of people who would never leave you and would never die, you would kind of be hell-bent on achieving that goal too, right? One thing I also want to say, when you said Isaac, I always forget, y'all know, Isaac is a biblical name, and in Butler's notes, he is the son of Abraham, and in Butler's notes, she says that Abraham and Doro are contemporaries. And basically they're around in Egypt at the same time, at least in her mind, right? And so this is how old she thinks of Doro. Like, if you can conceptualize that, if Doro was around the same time Abraham was around, then that would mean that he came before Christ.
A long time before Christ.
A long time. But I think she has 2,000 years of BC. So if you was around 2,000 years BC and you still around in 2025, I wouldn't have no patience either. I'm just saying.
But it's a choice, though.
It is a choice, for sure. And
the attitude that he has is a choice. He doesn't have to be that way. He chooses to be that way. In spite of being here thousands and thousands of years and never dying, in spite of not knowing what his background is, he still has a choice, and his choice is to be the way he is.
What if though? And I'm not running the stand account for Doro. This is just a broader question for everybody. Anyone can answer it. What if he's trying to break her resolve, right? He's literally trying to get her to submit. And he does use that language, like she needs to submit. She's too powerful. She's too independent. What if Doro is trying to come off as this person, this dictator, to break her resolve so that he can back up? I'm not saying it's right. It is a choice. But if you're trying to have someone integrate into a system, they will buck, right? So you will have to use some type of force. I'm not saying it's right though. Uh-oh. All right. Somebody want to go answer? Jump in. Share me your thoughts.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi. I'm Dahlia.
Hey, darling.
Um, this is the second time I'm reading the novel,
Okay.
and I read it fast. The first time I really, really loved it. This time I'm just kind of reading it slower and taking it in, um, especially like the backdrop of enslavement,
Mm-hmm.
along with, Doro's like master plan to breed this new race of people or
Mm-hmm.
whatever that he's constantly tinkering with. I don't have like a big conclusion about it. It's just
Okay.
something that's like really weighing heavily with me at this time.
Okay. Yeah. And
Um,
you can't. I think in somewhere I wrote, I've been writing a lot. You cannot divorce enslavement from this book, right? He's literally Butler's literally taking us on a migration narrative through a migration narrative
right,
from Africa, West Africa. We then
right,
end up in the Dutch area where the Dutch are
right.
speaking.
Which I like
Then
that
we
she
end
did
up on the
that.
Wheatley transplantation in
Yeah,
Louisiana, right?
right,
So we have gone from Africa through the transatlantic slave trade, because that is what happened aboard that ship that was a slave ship. We've gone through, and now we're in the Americas. And
right.
now he's having to break the will of a formerly free African and make her an enslaved woman.
Yeah, and just like the moment where she realizes like this isn't going to be, as someone else mentioned, this isn't going to be this like quid pro quo. She's not going to be able to like control him in turn. Just the heart, I don't know, it was just more heartbreaking
Yeah,
moment for me to read that.
yeah.
Um,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. I don't have it I don't have my thoughts fully formed. But I was thinking about what you said about migration, just the fact that he migrated from Nubia. They migrated first to New York. I'm in New York, and that's something that I go over with my kids too, like slavery in New York and how it existed because they don't realize.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then to the south, I like the way that she, I don't, she, I don't know. A lot of times when people envision the African continent, they think, oh, people are just kind of just chilling in their area and nobody went anywhere and they just had the same thing going on for thousands of years. And she just teases this idea of like people moving and migrating. And then you have this backdrop of, you know, some people being greedy and, participating in the slave trade, but also just I don't know, there's like snippets of all that history, right? Like Arabic people and mixing with African
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like she did that really early on before this was common knowledge. So I was impressed with that reading it again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one thing that I want to bring up to all of you all now that we know, I know y'all struggling to see, I think someone put in the chat, I'm struggling to see Duro as a black man because I see him as an evil spirit. When you get his backstory in part two, I want to circle back to that. But I think the fact that in essence, he is still a Nubian or of Nubian descent, we have to think about what that means about male and female relationships on the plantation, black male and female relationships once we reach the site of the plantation. I have a fully fledged thought because I wrote an academic article about it, but I don't want to force that idea on you this early. But we're going to circle back to that in next week's class. But these are black people. We cannot, no matter if he's wearing a white body or not, and we're gonna see Anyanwu do some. We love her right now, but y'all know she's going to be just as complicated as Dana is complicated. So we love her right now because we ain't got too much, and Butler is setting us up to dislike Doro. But if Anyanwu can heal, she can also kill. If Anya, just keep that in mind. Okay, anybody else want to hop in before we get into the Substack questions? If y'all not subscribed to the Substack, you need to be because that's where I communicate throughout the week. Anybody else? All right, let's get into it. Wild Seed discussion questions, page 5 through 123. The first question that we are going to tackle is shapeshifting versus body snatching and the ethics of survival. The question says both Anyanu and Doro possess transformative abilities used for survival, one through voluntary change, the other through forced possession. How do these differing abilities reflect larger themes of autonomy and control? Are we more inclined to accept one form of bodily transformation over another? And in what ways do their powers raise ethical concerns about agency, identity, and body integrity?
I can speak on this
Okay.
because I had so many thoughts on this. I kept on thinking about how Enyanwu was so embodied and everything was so detailed. Everything she ate, she brought down to like the cellular level and how it felt in her body. And she could just eat a piece of flesh and then embody that. And I found that so interesting and so rooted in her being, and how that was a part of her shape shifting. And I thought that was such a cool contrast to Doro, and how he was, in my opinion, disembodied. I mean, literally disembodied, but also like would just. I think it was in the beginning where he was in the first body, and that body was like failing, and he was like, I can't be too close to her because I might take her body by accident. And he had like no control, where she was like very, very controlled, very, very detail oriented, like down to the cellular level. And he was just kind of taking, he had will with his taking, and then but not always. And I just thought that that was such a cool contrast to be made in the story. And so I found myself like really studying that, and I was like annotate. It made me pull out my pencil and annotate for the first time in a really long time. It was like writing notes in the margins, like, wow, this is so cool. And I think that to me has a lot, it transferred to their personalities as well. And it transferred on to their characters as well. And even though he is such an emotionless, tactful character, and she seems at least to be a more led by emotion character, I'm wondering that that's not really, I'm like waiting for like the coin to like to flip sides.
Yeah. Yeah, because experience trauma changes you, change of landscape changes you, everything you may have experienced has the ability to change you, even down to the cellular level, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that when what you are articulating is what a lot of people in the chat are saying, as well as what people in the Substack are saying. In a way, we have been groomed to accept Anyanu's changes, right? Because it doesn't seem like she's harming anyone. But yes, Doro does snatch bodies out of anger, but he has to sometimes snatch them. When he meets Anyanu, he says, this body needs rest. Or he says, there are other places in the text where he says, I'm going to have to change this body soon. So
Yeah.
if the body is tiring, if the body is not replenishing itself, if it's not healing fast enough, he has to snatch. He has to jump bodies. Now, he don't have to always do it. Sometimes he does it to prove a point and to be rude and evil. But sometimes he has to. And this is I think, his downfall, right? He's always going to have to wear the body of another person. And even when he and Anyanwu get into it towards the end of the section, when he tells her, hey, you're going to go ahead and marry Isaac, and she's like, no, I'm not. And he says, if I have to take your body, I will, basically. And I'm
Yeah.
going to get what I want. And she's like, no, you can't. So she destroys her internal organ so that he can't produce. But the fact that he can take the body, but he will always still be himself. And that has to be a hard thing to walk around in someone else's flesh. Did y'all see the movie Behind Her Eyes on Netflix, the series?
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So if y'all saw it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This astral projecting, shape shifting, switching of soul swapping thing that happens in the spiritual realm. I'm a believer that it can still happen in real life, because I know how the spiritual realm work. But it's a weird thing that plays out on screen on Netflix, where these people do some type of ritual. I saw it long ago. I can't remember what happened, but they do this ritual and they basically switch bodies. It's kind of like the skeleton key, if y'all saw the skeleton key.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
When they're doing these rituals and they're invoking these other spirits to push one soul from the body so that the other soul can now have their body, right? It's not as far-fetched, y'all, as we think. Okay, anybody else?
Really quickly. First of all, thank you, Dr. Whiteside. I'm so excited that A, I'm part of this conversation now, and B, that people are talking about this, because I think I've said this before in your comments. I've been obsessed with these books for like nearly 20 years. So I think also thinking about the aftermath of the body switching. It's not like he leaves the body and the body just goes back into its own agency. That body's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is no coming back from that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Nyanwu, like she can change into other things, creatures, people. She can change her own appearance. Um, but she doesn't. There's no like seemingly there's no negative aftermath from it.
So is the tension the difference between changing a body and creating a body?
Well, she kind of creates bodies too.
That's what I said.
So so like she is creating bodies, and there is some negative effects in the sense that, so for example, when she eats the flesh of the dolphin, obviously that dolphin is dead. She didn't cause that dolphin to die,
Yeah. Yeah.
but she's also creating recreating a creature that had already existed. And so when she goes into the water, those other dolphins recognize that body as
Dolphin.
their compatriot.
Yes.
They're I don't know, what do you call them, a pod member, family member.
Mm-hmm.
But then she also talks about, well, what happens when I'm going to disappear, and that creature that they knew and loved potentially, and recognize that individual is no longer there.
Mm-hmm.
They're no longer part of that pod. So it's a different kind of, I guess, aftermath than what Doro does, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's completely morally neutral.
Okay. I take it.
One of the things that is always fascinating me about I'm sorry, this is Tina. One of the things that's fascinating me about Butler is that you cannot read fast through her stuff because you're going to miss breadcrumbs, right? She's
Yeah.
always going to lead you someplace, and then you're going to be like, 7 chapters later going, oh my God, that was really an important piece of it. So one of the things that he says when they're on the boat, when he recognizes that when she is an animal, I can't sense her.
Mm-hmm.
I can't sense her. I can't do this or whatever else. And in that passage, what I felt was like he was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
She is immortal. I think he's extremely short-sighted. If I'm lonely, here's somebody that can be with me forever.
Yeah.
She's immortal.
Yeah.
And instead of like holding on to that, he wants to control it. Instead of like, okay, let me just respect her or what she says. It's a small piece of his whole thing that he's out there doing. Mm-hmm. She's basically telling him, do everything you want to do to whoever you want to do it. Just don't do it to me or mine.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like rejecting that. I think the fact that he knows 100% that he cannot, like if she turned into a cat or she turned into whatever and escaped from him, he would lose her and he would have no control.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, to me, that showed his, like, even though he's arrogant, that how afraid he was and how he's like, he's weaker. He's got
Yeah.
this, he's got this arrogance and stuff like that, but that he's weaker. And it's like, I think that he hates it.
Yeah.
He might be jealous of her. I mean, I haven't seen that. I haven't, going to the second half of this again. Um, but that was one of the things that stood out to me. Like, Butler says specifically that when she turned into an animal, he could not find her. He could not control her. He could not do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he cannot also possess animal bodies.
Mm-hmm.
So when she becomes an animal, she is basically cut off. None of his powers will work.
Mm-hmm.
None of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
She
she
has a way. She
that.
has a way to escape him.
Yeah. And no one has ever had that ability to escape him.
That's
So
correct.
yeah, so now Anyanwu has exposed his weakness because Doro, when they say what happens when somebody runs, I think Isaac says he'll hunt them down and wear their bodies like that as just to teach someone a lesson, like you're not gonna get away. And he generally gives people head starts, like go ahead, but he can track them. But in animal form, he cannot track an animal because the mind of an animal is not human.
Right.
You can only track the human mind and soul, right?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, sticking to that point, when she kills his son, the telepath, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, Layla. And she is an animal when she does that.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, it's been a long time since I've been a woman, kill again, right? Threatening to take her body while she's still that animal. So I have a question there because that goes, like, I guess, in contradiction to what we were talking about. So can he still?
It's a threat.
Okay.
It's a threat because I think the next line says, or either this is the line before that moment on the ship, and Yanwu had too much power, right?
Yes, he does. He's
So
definitely weaker, but I just wanted to know whether he could or whether that was an empty threat or not, because she feared him at that moment.
mm-hmm. So she goes back to a woman form, right? To this soft woman because he was trying to get her to stop doing what she was doing. She's in leopard form. Well, first off, I wanna kind of talk about that scene because it's a layered scene, and I don't think we can kind of gloss over that scene because you have Leo, a telepath and he's a white man who has implanted thoughts of this sexual encounter with Anyanwu and Isaac, and Leo, right? So it's this our scene, okay? And it's aboard the slave ship, on the slave ship. So this is Butler nodding back to the fact that Black women were, insert that R word, on a slave ship. But she allows Anyanwu to triumph because though he brain hacks, though he fragmented her soul and her consciousness, she was able to shift. And in that moment, he shifted quickly too. I don't know if y'all caught that she said some type of green scaly thing stood before her. In his fear, he shifts out of that. So he's not only a telepath, he also has the ability to shapeshift. However, he was not as fast as Anyanwu in the kill, and she turns into a leopard and decapitates him. Head speaks to power and headship. So Butler, in essence, is allowing Anyanwu to avenge the women whose bodies were taken from them on the slave ship through this symbolic action of Anyanwu decapitating Leo and getting revenge. Is that clear? Am I clear on here?
Yes.
See, that's interesting to me because I've read that scene several times. I've always thought of that as more of him projecting an image of himself as that creature and not him actually physically shapeshifting. I'm gonna have to go back and read that again because that was always what it was, that they were, it was like a mind battle. Yes, physically he was there, but he's projecting this image of this creature to her to scare her. So I'm gonna have to go back on that.
I didn't see that. I didn't get that. But we can go back. Either you right or I'm right. It don't even matter. I didn't think about the fact that he could project, but I don't think she. Y'all know what page it is, because I think it's worth us going back to the text.
I have it digitally, so I have to go look back at it.
Oh, let me see. If anyone has the seed to harvest, I know that I have it marked in my book. To be honest, page 70. If is that the seed to harvest text? Oh, yep, page 70 and a seed to harvest. Okay, let me read it. Okay. I'm going to go to page 69. It says, she looked at him, and for an instant, she saw him clearly. The too long face twisted with pain and anger, its mouth open and gasping, its nose smashed flat and blurt and spurting blood. She had hurt him more than she intended, but she did not care. No one had the right to go on tampering with the very thoughts in her mind. Then the bloody face was gone. A thing stood before her, a being more terrible than any spirit could imagine, a great horned, scaly lizard thing of vaguely human shape, but with a thick lashing tail and a scaly dog head, with huge teeth set in its jaws that could surely break a man's arm. In terror, Anyanwu transformed herself.
And I also thought that that wasn't a projection. It was real because Doro is actually a spirit. So if he's a half breed of those two, it wouldn't be far fetched for me to think that he is also a spirit. And that would be the embodiment of the spirit he actually was, because she always is asking Doro to show her his true self. And he's just like, it's better for you to look at me as I am, because I would scare you of what I actually am, which is why I thought it was not a projection.
Yeah, I think it's not a projection. I don't think it's a projection. But we could have, if you were just reading that, I could see how you came up with that for sure. Because she even says the spirit screamed, collapsed, and became a man again.
And it's so instantaneous where we've seen that her transformations do take some time. So that's kind of where I was at, where I was thinking it was like a
Oh, I
projection,
see.
whether it was a projection of him, of his spiritual self showing itself, or like a projection into her mind of something to try and scare her away. I think it can be interpreted either way.
You know, one of the things about her when she describes her transformations versus shape shifting. Okay, and this may be a little nerdy because I am also a Marvel and DC superhero kind of fan.
Okay.
Is that when I think about shape shifting, I think about I'm still the same person. I shaped myself into a different form.
Yeah.
But when she says transformation, she becomes the thing she's transforming into. And there's a difference between shape shifting in terms of like I'm taking on the vessel, like I'm taking on the like water, I'm taking on the vessel or the container. My container has changed, right? Whereas when she talks about like eating the flesh, like she's down to the molecules. When she talks about what her transformation is not just surface.
So
It's
so
everything.
break it down. Give it to me again.
I think that when you talk about shape shifting, at least like if you like, I'm a big Star Trek person. So when you talk about, becoming a rock, like the changelings or some other kind of stuff, they always talk about is changing the shape.
Okay.
Like, and the highest form of that is to become the thing that you are shape shifting into. So like, there's a difference. So when you do the when she's talking about her transformations, especially when Butler's describing it, I mean she's down to like the blood flow, she's down to the molecules, like small, tiny cells, and she's examining it, and that she then manipulates that beyond that. So it's not just changing the shape, it's transforming.
But in
So
essence, she's still her.
it's still her,
Yeah.
but she's literally transforming like everything else about, like her soul is still the same person, her soul is still the same, but everything else, even when she became a dolphin, she talked about like if she stayed with them, she could lose herself.
And she could produce dolphin children.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I think that the stuff I've seen, like in other genres and everything else, when you shapeshift, that's not true. You don't then produce dolphin children or some other things.
Hmm. Okay. I think that that's fair because even there's a point when they're trying to understand her transformation. She's like, I take my hair and my nails inside of myself, right,
Correct.
in order to be this other thing. So I can get behind that distinction for sure. Yeah. So I feel like we are more accepting of Anyanwu still and not of Doro. Is that right?
No, I think they're two sides of the same coin, and I think that when she does do this transformation thing, the while she can create other beings, she does have a thirst to actually be them, which is why sometimes she prefers eating the flesh or tasting some of it so she can it's it's painted here as out of curiosity, but I think she wants to. And she, again, Anyang, she's the sun, right? She can burn. Like, so she has no problem killing. And I know we're supposed to hate Doro and how blunt he is about everything, but she's not completely benign. She's not. So I don't know. I don't think, yeah, nah, not for me.
I agree. That's exactly what I was gonna say as well. Because even the scene on the boat with the dolphin, there's an impulsiveness to her. She watched something, she gets really curious, and then she has, like, the way she's describing to him, like, I need to do this, I want to do this, and then there's like a back and forth with him of like, is he gonna allow or not allow? And I think he's also trying to come off as like, I need to be fair and allow you to do this, but he's also back and forth in his mind about, I know her power, but I have to be careful of what I allow and when I show my cards. But there's like, she sees something, she's so intrigued by it, and then she gets really impulsive about becoming this thing. And then even when she killed the telepath, that I think the anger and the hunger for flesh that she's learned to tamp down over the years, because she's embodied this nurturing spirit that has a village, and she's learned to survive off the idea of being a healer. But I think deep down she has an impulsiveness and has the same kind of greed for flesh as well, and it came out in kind of different ways, but we're being endeared to her through curiosity and a childlike sense of wonder. So yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up. Someone in the chat says Doro could be a god. He is God. Doro is God in this series, and that is why he's always trying to reinforce. If I say this is not an abomination, this is not an abomination. People here play by the rules I have set. So in Doro's universe, he is God, right? Which is why in the beginning I brought up when someone said, like, why is it taking him so long? I think it was Ebony says, why is it taking him so long to build this race of people? The same questions can be offered to God in the Judeo-Christian, belief system, right? If you had all this time, why haven't you already created this perfect race of humanity? Ultimately, we have to factor in human will.
I see the parallels, but I'm struggling with the fact that if he's God, then how is Anyanwu seemingly more powerful?
So
I'm struggling with that.
Humans have power. Do we agree? Humans have power. If you're of the Judeo-Christian belief system, or if you're a Christian, we know that there are certain scriptures that point to kind of like, as it is on earth, so it is in heaven. So whatever you allow, whatever you bind on earth is bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth is loosed in heaven. Whatever you allow as a human in the Christian faith, whatever you allow by your words, it is also permissible in heaven to come to pass. Whatever you bind by your words, your authority, it is also permissible. So while we are not God, we are God-like because we are made in the image of the triune God.
Which I get, but the triune God is all encompassing, right? We get our talents and gifts from him.
100.
Why doesn't Doro have these abilities already built in?
You have to understand his background. So
Okay.
he cannot be our God, right? He cannot do that. Butler she's towing the line here, and she's also struggling with that in her notes. But he is God as in he is the progenitor of everyone else, right? So your question is, how can Anyanwu escape him, or how is she also powerful, right? If I'm hearing this correctly.
No, she can be powerful, but she can't be more. In my eyes, she's more powerful. She has more control and she has more abilities. She can also, and one of those abilities is her ability to escape. My whole thing is that if we're looking at it in the Judeo-Christian system, our talents and gifts are as a result of the God, the progenitor, right? We can't do more than he can. Like, he has all of the tools in his tool belt. So why is it that Doro has, one, no control over his abilities, and two, she can evade him, she can escape him. He can't do what she can do. In a sense, he seemingly has no control over what he can do sometimes and other times. That's what I'm struggling with.
I'm going to try to break this down, the concept of time, right? When we're thinking about time, and I don't want this to be a religious lesson, so maybe you and I will have to have a deeper discussion off of this, but when we're thinking about the concept of time, a lot of believers believe that God is so powerful that he created the heavens and the earth, and he created everything. This is what the Bible tells you, but he locked himself out of time. So because he created everything and locked himself out of time, he requires some type of partnership. That is not weakness at all. That is, I am going to respect the boundaries of this world that I gave my children, and I'm going to I'm going to intervene if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, then I would do this thing. But I can't intervene unless you invite me into this world to intervene. Yes, there will be some type of, I don't want to say manipulation, because I believe in God and I'm a Christian. But there will be some times when God intervenes because he is God. Right. But largely, this is your world. You will die by certain things and plagues if you go against what I say. And so I think only way that I can make sense of this in my mind is the concept of time. All powerful God that we believe, but still locked out of time, and we are bound to time. This is our world. This is our earth. Whatever we allow here will be as it is in heaven. Not saying it is the will of God to have these calamities happen that we're seeing in the world, but it is permissible because we are the little gods on earth. That's the only way that I make sense of it. Anybody want to?
So one of the things about whether Doro is a god, Doro sees himself, whether they want to acknowledge, Doro sees himself as a god. He says it. His people treat him as such. He sees himself as a god. He's fully embraced that, and he's gonna be I'm gonna do what I want to do because that's what it is. He recognizes that she also is God or goddess because she's immortal. She has all these gifts. He cannot 100% control her, and he knows that. He knows he doesn't get that. He's frustrated by that. Her thinking is that of survival. So when she talks about, like, when she's had to kill in the past, when she talks about how the villagers treated her and all of this kind of stuff, she never positioned herself as a goddess that could strike them all down and then have them worshiping her the same way Doro's people worship him. She didn't allow that to happen, and she could have. What she did was become valuable to them in a way that protected herself, as opposed to taking on the mantle of a goddess.
Okay.
And I think that's the conflict between. To me, it feels like that. Like, cause she could definitely be. I'm the goddess. She could be Storm. I mean, she could be. She could be a goddess and have them worshiping her. But she chose not to do that.
And in a sense, they do, though. It's very subtle when she say
Yes.
my people. Pay attention to the language Anyanwu uses in the first half, especially in the second half, as we're about to close the book. She has some of these same Doro-like tendencies that are starting to bud in part one. But I also want to bring up deities, right? Doro is a deity. We can think, if we can't think of him as the omniscient God in the Judeo-Christian faith, we can think about him as a deity who has control over certain kingdoms.
To kind of piggyback off of what Tina was just saying, the comparison between Duro and Yawu and how they present themselves to quote unquote their people. I'm wondering if Butler was making the comparison between men and women and how they use their influence. Duro, very male like, very dominant, wants to show himself dominantly and to be revered as a god. And Yawu more as a mother who is kind and compassionate, wants to heal her people, whereas Doro leads by fear. Do what I say, or I will kill you. And even that with Anyawu, if she does not obey, she understands the threat to her children. And that's really how Duro keeps the control over her. There's this constant threat to her children.
I like that. So either you're going to rule by your iron fist, or as in the masculine, or you're going to come the back way in the passive and rule as a woman in the feminine. Is that what we're seeing, what you're talking about?
Yes, masculine versus feminine.
I think also. Oh, sorry.
No,
I was gonna say. Oh,
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and Yawu kind of uses her power when she kills the 7 men. Was it 7 men?
Yes,
And she lets the rumors continue as a control factor. Don't try me again. Don't come at me sideways again. And yeah.
I think also it's the way that they both view people, as in like the humanity of people. Doro is so far removed, like centuries removed from any sort of humanity, that he views people like, yes, he wants to protect the people that he has gathered together, created, bred, but he looks at them almost like a farmer would look at a herd of cows, versus how Anyanwu, she views her people as she's constantly talking about her descendants, right? She has hundreds of descendants. She has family. It's a family thing for her. It's not a food source. They're not property to her. She is part of them as much as they are part of her.
I think there's a lot of Marvel people, superhero people here, but Doro, in my mind, is most akin to a vampire, like a Dracula, right? So many, like he's like thousands and thousands and thousands and eons of years old, and he's just like very, very distant, very aloof. Probably had to deal with a lot of hardships because people didn't understand him, didn't understand what he was while he was trying to figure out what he was. And there's probably a point where he did have compassion, but because humans are human and they human, he probably is just like, yeah, I'm off that. And this is what I need you guys to do, which is Dracula's story. And you can see that. And so I'm not too quick to, be on the Doro hate train, because humans are human and people, and y'all know how we be.
And I also think we have to think about, and this is the human body. I think we have to consider what happens when your spirit is entrapped in a body. Our spirits are entrapped in a body. That's what gives us legal right to access this world, right? Legally, because we have the bodies. And so Doro is an entity, a spirit. He has become a spirit over time, I guess, if that's what we want to think about him. But he is trapped by the confines of a human body. He has to have a body to travel. Now, somebody in the chat said Doro is not omniscient. That is correct, but he has an awareness that can be likened to omniscience. And this is what I mean. He sensed Anyanwu when he was miles away. When he's having a conversation with Anyanwu, telling her that she has to go to Isaac, he's like, there are people that are over here that need me. He's aware of them. So while he may not be present physically, his awareness is very everywhere. Right? So he is aware of all of his people, all of the strands of his people. So I want us to keep that in mind. Okay, y'all, we be on one question and time is going to start running out. We do not get through none of these questions. Anybody
I
else
know
want
the
to?
discussion's good.
I know, like we don't get through nothing. I want to talk
We
about
need a whole day to discuss the book.
right, right. Okay, let's talk about healers. No, I don't want to go there. Let's talk about the fragility and disposability of bodies. Okay. Throughout Wild Seed, Butler underscores the fragility and disposability of bodies, raising questions about the value placed on physical form. How does the novel's depiction of bodily disposability challenge our contemporary understanding of bodily worth? And in what ways do race, gender, and power influence how bodies are valued, both in the novel and in modern society?
I think the fact that we can't get through one question is that your questions be so loaded. That is a huge that's yeah.
It's big.
It's real big.
It's big. Let's go one. Let's go one line at a time. How does the novel's depiction of bodily disposability challenge our contemporary understanding of bodily worth? This is what I'm asking. How do we measure the worth of a body?
The novel measures the worth of a body by race, gender, age, and I guess that's how, us as a society may value the worth of life.
I think so. I think and I'm from Chicago, so I think so a lot of time them YNs have no regard for life.
Right.
Bodies are disposable, right? And there is just no regard. And so I think that we have been so, I don't know, sometimes we have these moments where culture rises up and we're like, yeah, we need to fight, we need to resist. But then again, it's like, we're used to bodies being disposed, more specifically Black bodies being disposed of, right?
Duro's first kill, it kind of shocked Anyanwu because it was a child, because she valued that child's life, but Duro saw that child as a child of a slave, so it was less valuable to him than it was to her.
Let me introduce this, because Anyanwu killed twins because they were seen as abominations.
Correct, which was common practice back in the day. Albinos, twins, all of that thing. I think it challenges, again, I'm going back to Achebe's works because it was the same thing. I think it challenges us because now in modern times where morality says that we're supposed to value everybody, and that while our politically correct brain wants to do that, it's our cultural brain that kind of prevails. If you think about it now, like again, working in the healthcare setting, back when we had COVID and ventilators were scarce, you had to assign value to a body.
Young bodies.
Was it so old? Was this person old on their way out? We can, save this 20-year-old as opposed to a 60-year-old. You have to make these hard decisions every single day. And so it's about, the environment you were around. So I can't really fault Duro for his black and white thinking, because Anyanwu's thinking was also black and white. And we can't sit on our high horse today and say that, everybody should be valued, because in 2020, we had to make decisions.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. Thank you for bringing up that example.
I thought that Anyanwu, maybe I misinterpreted, but I thought she kind of participated in those rituals to kind of throw off suspicion towards her, and that if she could save a life, like if she felt like she could get away with it, she would. So I kind of interpreted that more as her weighing like self-preservation. I didn't think she believed that, oh, that twins had to go, or I don't think she actually believed in any of that.
No, I think it's a cultural practice,
I
right?
know, but I didn't feel as though she actually, like with her like living longer, like she even mentions like with her statues and everything.
Yeah.
She's like, sometimes I have to do things and they have to kind of like believe that it's a spirit. You know what I mean? That did it. Or
Yeah.
that,
But then I think we're getting into a debate of ethics and survival. I think your point is well taken, but if you agree that this is agreement, right? Like Yeah, she may be trying to preserve herself, but you're still killing innocent children
Right.
to preserve
Yeah,
your own
absolutely.
mind. So if that is it, it still doesn't make it right because you're still killing and be under the guise of culture.
Right.
Yes, it's kind of like mercy killings. These,
Right. I was just trying to understand where, I wasn't saying it was right. I was just
yeah,
trying to understand where she was coming from with
I
it.
think
'Cause it
I think it's a
seemed
cultural
like,
practice, but I do think if you're in the culture, there is some type of agreement there, and if you're participating in it, in my mind, you are also guilty.
yeah, for sure. I was more going into like what is her, not so much whether she's guilty or not, but I'm trying to understand her more as a being. Like, how is, we see how Doro tries to preserve himself. Like, how is she trying to preserve herself? And I noticed that she would often use cultural tradition as a way to kind of preserve herself. Like, oh, if I do this, they're going to believe that. You know what I mean? And so that's going to help me live longer if they think that, I'm this being versus this woman who's, hanging out, living forever, which might freak them out.
I think I see where this other panelist is kind of alluding to, and I think that religiously, culturally, and religiously, and Yahoo kind of internalized some of those traditions. Just like killing her twins. Oh, none of my children were born with impurities, and how many times that she said something was an abomination. If we did a drinking game with how many times she said abomination throughout this first half of the book, we'd all be calling out to work tomorrow.
Sure.
Even though she tries to separate, oh, these statues are just for them so that they don't fear me, she has also internalized some of these beliefs. So she and Yahweh is stuck in her ways about what's right and what is wrong. And Duro is kind of like, no, what I say is right, and what I say is wrong is wrong. He's kind of dragging her away from some of those old beliefs that she has.
Mhm.
So it's like how much of this is just her believing that things are right and wrong, and how much is it a show for the people?
I don't know how we can untangle that, right? Because at some point, people, you do it long enough, you do start to believe it on some level. And I know culture is thick, religious culture is thick, as well as, just social culture is thick. And so I totally get where y'all are coming from. I'm just, as someone on the panel said, they're two sides to the same coin. They're doing the same thing. Some Anyanwu may justify it as, oh, this is our culture, but Doro is also saying, this is my culture. So we can't, I don't think we can draw the line, a clear line in the sand, because they're kind of doing the same thing for different reasons. Yeah, maybe, but it's still the same. The value of a child is in the hand of the person who decides to take that life.
So jumping in really quickly, and kind of shifting a little bit and going back into Doro and what he values. I saw a few people kind of in the chat saying, he values ability, right? And we talk about, yes, of course, he values these particular people for their potential abilities, their latent abilities, their, what they are after transition. But he also has several people that he have no ability. The guy that is like in charge of picking out certain people at the port. He's got people within Wheatley that have no abilities but are strong people, strong-minded people that help his these kids through transition. He has certain people within certain institutions of power where he's able to kind of go in and figure. So I think it's less about the supernatural abilities that, although yes, he values that very much for his own reasons, but he also values what people can do for him outside of that as well. So there's also like a utilitarian value that he places on certain people, beyond what they can do with
Mhm,
these powers.
mhm. But I wonder, in what ways do we do that in society today?
We do that all the time. We do that all the time. Especially when we're talking about like talented 10th. So smart people are valued.
Yes.
And then we do that with wealth. People who
Yes.
have money are valued, even though they may or may not be necessarily smart. We value able people,
Mhm.
as opposed to people who aren't able as majority would be, considered, but they have abilities in their own right, but we just don't see that. Polyglots are valuable. Like it's about, I don't know. We do that all the time. We do that all the time. A lot of it is about our ability to be useful and to make capital. And some of it is just, because if information is valued, then if you're smart, you are valued. It just depends on society, but we do it all the time.
That might be why she has, this is Anita. That might be why she put that in there like that, because we might not be aware of how often, as the young lady just said, that we do it, that we can see it more clearly when we see Duro doing it. Mm-hmm. Because that is us.
We rank bodies all the time. All the time. It's ingrained in our culture. You cannot help yourself. And when I was reading this question tonight, I was like, I'm keep thinking about the lady. Y'all know the Dank DeMoss situation happening, right? The heavier set lady who was trying to get into Uber, and she's a rapper, and she's like very large, and she could not get into the back of this smaller Uber, and they canceled. The driver's like, I need you to get a Uber XL because of your weight. My car can't accommodate you. And so now she's suing. She was just on the Breakfast Club, and she couldn't fit in the 22-inch chair, and so they had to bring her a part of the sectional. And as I'm looking at this happen, because she is a heavier set Black woman, there is this ranking that people are saying they're adding value or subtracting value based on her weight, right? And we do it subconsciously. It's so also interesting that I'm going to say this: when I was on the job market and I was getting training to what to say and not to say, a lot of the discussions were about Black women and weight. How much does weight determine if you are worthy of getting a job or not? Or is it just to certain positions in the academy, right? So they can see two qualified people who are both smart, but body presentation matters here. So they would, of course, lean towards the more socially pleasing body rather than one who is considered deviant.
All the time. I think there's a study that went around saying that a lot of people tend to listen to the people who are socially more attractive than other people, even though they might be saying the same thing. Yeah, we constantly rank. We constantly rank. It's not right, but we do it because we're human. We're taught what to, by culture or by who we're around, because we need to survive and assimilate and not be othered. We are taught what we need to accept and what we don't need to accept, and we kind of fall in line, even though there are people who don't care. But when you're othered and it comes time to make a decision, you do care. You find out that you do care. So yeah, I be silent on Doro. I be telling y'all, I'm quiet. I'm quiet because I'm telling y'all, we do this every time.
We do.
So as a marketer, long career in marketing and executive level marketing, what I tell people is that people see themselves as more attractive than what they are.
Yeah.
So the average, or what is presented as average, this is what the average.
Uh-oh, you cut out.
Main cult, the dominant culture, or in African American culture, there is it's like when you look at what really is average, I can never use that in marketing. I can never use what is actually average in marketing. What I have to use is somebody who's pretty, but a little less pretty. So not Hollywood pretty, but a little less. Like this is an attractive person. And then I can say, oh, this is the average person. The same thing goes with weight. I'm talking about advertising, ads, TV, all of that stuff. And if there's a certain feel I'm looking for, if I'm looking for a certain type of authority, or if I'm looking for certain attributes, the weight is a weight, the complexions, the cut, all of that stuff plays into it because I'm trying to admit to something. So if I wanted to have a middle age, authority woman like that I want people to respect and I want them to look at her, she's not going to be a baddie.
Yeah.
Because then I don't want then people to look at her and then think she slept her way to the top. You have to have someone who looks more motherly, attractive, but more motherly and capable of being able to do it. And so there's a science around how do you select, what do you look at, or what do you do? So yeah, you're right. We do it all the time, and it's fed to us through advertising, through just living this life. You cannot live in the not just in the United States, in the world where there's advertising and promotion and all of this kind of stuff, and not understand what is valued and what those emotions come out of that.
Which is crazy because it brings me back to the Barbie movie. You can be attractive, but not too attractive. You have to be, you just said motherly, but you have to be attractive enough. How you look? I'm a mother. I'm supposed to be homely. I'm gathering children, but I can't look too homely. That is crazy. That is so crazy.
But that's true though. Like you want to have a mother that I remember having, and one, I'm not gonna tell you about the brand, but I remember having a conversation and they were like, we want her to look good, but we do not want her to be we do not want her to be hot. We want her to look attractive, like you can see why she's there and that she's pretty, and like, it's the same thing, like take off your glasses and put on some lipstick and now all of a sudden you hot.
Put the glasses on,
right? So you have to be so the basis of that has to be that you have to start off already attractive, but we have done something to you that you're not quite there. And now you take the glasses off and put your hair up and put on a pretty dress, and now you're just absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah, and somebody in the chat mentioned Anyanwu's natural shape. Let's not forget that her natural shape, and we're going to get her backstory too, okay, in part 2, but her natural shape is that of a young girl. 19 years old, I think, roughly. We're going to get that age in the second half, but she's young. So when Doro comes to her at night, she's not turning into that old woman that he met in Africa. She turned into a baddie at night. Okay. A young woman who he likes. And let me say this, we haven't gotten to that point, but we're about to get there. She starts to like some of the bodies he come back in.
But he didn't ask her to do that. She did that willingly herself.
There we go. She's not coerced. And I do have a question on here about coerce. See, that word's about to defeat me tonight. Y'all know what I'm saying. But she's not coerced. So there is this willingness. My man. Y'all know we talked about that last class about Sarah. But when we're going to start to see this love affair happen. So while we're like either Team Anyanwu or Team Doro in the chat, I know the panel is kind of like in the middle right now. We're going to see the blurring of lines, and we're going to start to see a different type of love emerge. Y'all, somebody said what question we on? We were on the question. I'm sorry.
I don't know if I said I keep wanting it to turn into a romance. Even though I know it's not, I'm saying subconsciously, not in real life.
I'm curious.
I'm like, well, maybe he'll fall in love and he'll like fix himself, or he'll become what he's supposed to become.
Curious to hear your thoughts about the second half, because I mean, I know we said we were pushing against love in Kindred, right? They're like, no, absolutely not. This cannot be any type of love. I'm curious as to what y'all think about love, or that concept or the idea of love in the second half of the book.
May I just say one thing?
Say codependency.
Okay.
Not love, but codependency.
For this book or Kindred?
Both.
Okay.
Let me share what I thought about that. I thought because she was so powerful and she had a more loving spirit, I thought that in this thing of romance and possible love, that is something he may have never experienced before because everyone left him. And she may be able to turn him around. So that's what I was hoping for. I know it's difficult and she has to fight this, and quote unquote, he's trying to submit, he's trying to bend her. But somebody said it earlier about her way of being able to bend or turn with the neck, that she would slowly over time, because they're both eternal, so we don't know how long that would take, but maybe get him to see or to feel different.
And even Isaac, and this is these are the final pages before we close out book one. Even Isaac says, "Submit to him now, Anyanwu, and later you can keep him from ever making us animals." So he's saying, submit now, but soften him over time. Only you can do this thing because Doro sees her value. He's said over and over again, she's too valuable to be killed. That is what wild seed is. Seed that's too valuable to be killed. So though he makes all of these threats, he knows I need this woman. And I've probably never needed anyone in my life.
And
So
then
this just
even already in the text, he already knows that he's gathering her children or plans to gather her children without her consent. It's always control with him. He always knew that he was going to control her and take her children and have his will above hers.
I can't
yeah,
believe
it's hard for me. I know that this is, story, whatever else, but it's hard for me to deal with the whole like you can, like he's a good man, Savannah. You could change him. I swear to God, just it's like, girl, he is who he is.
Okay, but
You
look,
can't change him. He's who he is.
look, Isaac is trying. Look, okay, I'm trying to walk a middle ground here. So Isaac is saying, this is his plea when he's pleading, please marry me, please don't make him kill you. He says to her, you'll get freedom, Anyawu, but first you will have to reach him. He is like a tortoise encased in a shell that gets thicker every year. It would take a long time for you to reach the man inside, but you have a long time. And there is a man inside who must be reached. He was born as we were. He's warped because he can't die, but he's still a man. Take the time, Anyawu, break the shell, go in. He might turn out to be what you need, just as I think you're what he needs.
Okay, so Isaac wanted to get with her. So
Yeah.
to me, like his motivation for that whole speech is selfish because he wanted her from the very beginning. He just
Yeah.
wanted her. So like, and he knew that this is the situation. And what I'm saying is that there, like, if she was like, what do I need to do in terms of, because again, she's extremely powerful. It's it's this, I don't know. Maybe it's like you said, the culture that's keeping her from being able to actually realize that and take control of it, at least in this first half of the book. But anytime you go into any relationships thinking that somehow your presence is going to make that other person change, you are doomed. Because
Preach.
either that person wants to do that or they don't. And your presence could help with that or not, but you're not you cannot control it. You can't control that. I mean, I'm just telling you, I've been married 3 times. I had to learn that. You have to be able to go in and say, if this person never changes, if they never alter who they are, can you live with that? And she, like, that's what she has to say. If you're going for the, like, I'm hoping that he's going to see me or he's going to go into my love and all of this kind of stuff, and he doesn't, oh, you're crushed. Look at all the sacrifices I made. Nobody asked you to make them sacrifices.
Um,
Nobody asked you to do all of that. This
some,
is, yeah.
somebody.
And can we remind our readers that this was after Doro had her one last time? This was right after he had her
Yes.
physically one last
Yes.
time. And so
Speak on,
now
girl.
Isaac is making his pitch because he wanted some too.
That's two. Thank you.
Okay,
And Yahweh was
y'all,
very busy that
y'all
night.
not finna tag team up here.
Just this might be this is, I think this is jumping ahead a little bit because I don't think we get into this until the next book. But Isaac has a similar conversation with Doro later on about this woman is not going away. She is permanent possibly as permanent as you are. You guys. He like it's so weird to me because like it's almost like he's trying to like push two divorced parents back together, even though he's married to her. But like
Yeah.
he does have a similar conversation with Doro. I think that's getting ahead a little bit, but
So
I'm not totally on the Doro hate train either. Although I think he's sus as hell. But yeah, he also has this conversation. It's not just with her.
So Isaac is the son, right? So points taken. He has not had that conversation, and he does want to get with Anyanwu. He does, but I think
Yes, yes,
his
yes.
his conversation with her right now, and later his conversation with Doro later on in part two, is the fact that he realizes you all have both met your matches finally. She's a woman that never has to leave you. He's a man that never has to leave you. He doesn't have to die. You don't have to die. And I wrote a post about loneliness on the Substack the other day. I think it was for the paid subscribers. But Butler wrote Covenant. This book was supposed to be titled Covenant, right? Now, it's not the title, but it is the title of book 1 in this text. It's Covenant 1690. So in this book 1, they are making a covenant with each other, Doro and Anyanwu. We can see it as a contract if you want to use more secular terms, but a covenant signifies something that's spiritual. Marriage in our faith is considered a covenant, right? And so it's not just a partnership. Butler is starting to signal that this is something different and that Anyanwu will have a hand in some way in building and helping Doro build this race of people that he's been trying to breed for millennia. We out of time, y'all. Somebody want to say something? Miss Tina, you want to say something? Oh, okay, no. Okay, so we're starting with book 2, and I think we should also pay attention to these subtitles of the book, or the titles of the books. Lot's children. Do y'all know what happened in the biblical story of Lot? I can tell you if you don't. No.
I do.
Okay. I may let you tell us before I tell us. Or I may. Okay, go ahead. You want to tell us?
Nah, you got it.
Okay. Okay, so Abraham's nephews was Lot. And I'm about to give you a biblical history lesson. Abraham was the father of our faith, as we believe, and God told him to leave your father's house and go to a land that I will show you. And Abraham has to leave. His father was kind of like a believer of deities, right? He worshiped multiple gods. He was polytheistic in a way. And God tells him to leave this because he needs to become the father of our faith. So God needs to get him away from this father who was practicing all of the, what we would consider in Christianity, witchcraft or deity worship, New Age spiritualism, whatever you want to call it. He tells him to get away from there. Eventually, Abraham does get away from there, but he leaves with his nephew Lot. Lot's father, Haran, dies in the land of Haran. And I think that's important. I may tell y'all about that next class. But anyway, God tells Abraham to leave, and Abraham brings Lot. It's all good until it's not, because God begins to increase Abraham's wealth. And as a result of Abraham's wealth increasing, Lot's wealth begins to increase. Of course, the two kinsmen, people start to fight. They need to go separate ways. Abraham tells Lot, take whichever pasture that you want. Lot says, I'm going to take the one that's the greenest, that has the most profit. Cool. He takes all of that. They part ways. Lot ends up in Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah is a land that is hypersexual. They are hypersexual, homosexual. They practice child sacrifices. They do a lot of stuff in Sodom and Gomorrah that is considered against God in the Old Testament. As a result, God sends angels to destroy this land. But Abraham is saying, please don't destroy this land, because ultimately Lot here. And of course, Abraham is negotiating. Are you going to destroy humanity if 10 people, 9 people? He gets all the way down. But anyway, he asks God to spare Lot. God sends these angels to Sodom and Gomorrah. They meet Lot and they tell him, get your wife and your children, we're gonna leave here. However, the people are like, no, y'all not leaving here. Send them men out here so we can have our way with them. And y'all know what y'all mean by have their way. Lot says, no, don't touch the men. Take my daughters who've never been with men. That's a whole thing. I have a lot of issues with that. So they're like, no, we want the men. So the angels snatch Lot inside of the house. They blind the men so they could never, find the door. Ultimately, let me speed this story up. The angels tell Lot, we cannot destroy this land of Sodom and Gomorrah with fire and brimstone until you leave. So he tells them, don't look back. Okay. The angels tell Lot to go to, I forget what mountain it is, but Lot says, no, I can't make it to that mountain. Let me settle in Zor. Zor, the name Zor translates to insignificant. So the angels are saying, go to this high mountain. Lot is saying, absolutely not. Let me settle in insignificance. That matters because after all of this happened, you never hear from Lot again. However, they go off. He says, okay, as they are traveling to Zor, Lot's wife looks back. She turns into a pillar of salt. There are a lot of theological debates around why she turns into this pillar of salt, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. She turns into a pillar of salt, and now Lot has his daughters. So it's Lot and his daughters. They go to the land of Zor. The angels or God rains down fire and brimstone, destroys everything, but Lot and his family are saved. Lot's children, they are no men there with the daughters. They've never been with men. And so they're like, hey, if God has just destroyed everyone, let us get our father drunk and go in and sleep with him. And they did. They go in, they sleep with Lot, they pregnant, and now we got Lot's children. You need to keep this last part in mind, that they go in and sleep with their father, right? And produce children, because this is setting the tone for book 2. That's all I got. Did I miss anything?
No, ma'am, that was it.
Okay.
I love
right,
these
y'all.
discussions. These are awesome.
What you say?
Yeah,
You gave the biblical history correct.
no,
That's what it is.
that was the rundown, and like I don't know if it continues, but this is not the first story of deception that is woven within the Bible. So she's using that kind of context to set the tone. We might see this repeatedly.
You're going to
But
see it.
yes, that was the second time someone had deceived somebody. Was Lot's story.
Mm-hmm.
People should read their Bibles.
If not for religious reasons, because I was seeing in the comments that, hey, this is Igbo culture. Igbo deities are different from Christianity, so we shouldn't look at it in the lens. And I'm like, I don't think we're trying to do that. I think that was the author's intention, is to weave references that she knows, because she didn't go into the Igbo deity. So I think that's what is different.
I think we should stop trying to separate the two, y'all, and stop trying to make these distinctions. There are distinctions, and we should not in your life practice mixture. I believe we shouldn't, but for the sake of us putting on our thinking cap, we can hold the tension. You can hold the mixture of the sacred and the secular rising together. She has not privileged African deities over Christian gods. She has not done that. She is letting them coexist. And so we have to be okay with the tension of this, right?
Also, she's being drawn from what she knows to the American, Doral's whole thing is to get her to conform and to break her. So we can see how, which is what was done, but through the lens of Christianity, what they came down for. So I think that it's appropriate here. She's weaving in things, but yeah, if you're not Christian, that's fine. But I think reading religious text really does in things. But yeah, if you're not Christian, that's fine. But I think reading religious text really does we read other things. So it's an interesting read if you're not religious. If anything, it's an interesting read. But if you are, you should read your Bibles.
And I try to stay away
I
from
thought that she was showing a way to deconstruct from both of them and showing us the God within ourselves. I thought she was showing to deconstruct from all religion.
She could.
And how to find the God within ourselves.
I think when we're reading, and this is for any text, what you want to see in a text, you will see. Whatever you prepared your intention to see, you're going to see it. I also want us to know that even when we get to the slave plantations, in any text, there are still conjurings. So while we're saying Anyanwu is healing, she is still conjuring roots. She is still mixing elements in order to get a certain outcome. And so while we may use a different term, it's kind of like slavery by another name. we're using different terms, but we're not privileging either in the text. So I want to encourage everyone. I didn't see the comment, but I want to encourage everyone to put on your thinking cap and not be resistant to the discussions, because you don't have to agree with me or my faith. I don't have to agree with you or your faith. We're here to discuss a book and hold space for everyone's experience. Okay. All right. Anybody got
Thank
any?
you, everybody. I was so glad that I was able to participate this time, even though I was late.
It's
Yes,
all
thank you
good.
so much.
I,
This
I
was
had to, I
amazing.
had to feed my kids, so
Well, look, do what you
Talk to you guys
can. Do
later.
what
This
you
is great.
can.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. So I'll see y'all next Wednesday. Meet me on the Substack tomorrow. I'll be dropping the discussion questions for part 2 and more information. If you're not subscribed to the Substack, the link is in my description. And also, this lecture, whenever TikTok lets me download it between tonight and tomorrow, will be up on YouTube, the Octavia Butler mixtape course. So you can go ahead and subscribe to that. The link is also in the bio. I was going to say in the Bible. In the bio. I'll talk to y'all next week.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all. Great discussion.